UN releases war criminals in Central African Republic. The UN mission in the Central African Republic, CAR, released rebel fighters accused of shooting a UN peacekeeper, confidential documents seen by the BBC show. The two men were handed back to their commander in 2015, despite injuring the Union peacekeeper, a war crime under international law. Because the incident happened shortly before crucial elections, UN officials chose to appease the electoral process by setting the alleged war criminals free, handing them over, a UN report says. This revelation is the latest blow for a peacekeeping mission beset by problems. This cannot go unpunished. The incident itself took place in December 2015. 4 rebel soldiers belonging to a mainly Muslim militia, Union pour la Paix en Centrafrique, UPC, which translates as the Union for Peace in CAR, approached a UN checkpoint on motorcycles in the central town of Galabaroma. A peacekeeper asked them to stop and told them to put their hands above their heads for a search. But instead, 2 of the men took out weapons and aimed at the UN troops, a confidential investigative report reveals. UN soldiers shot back, killing a rebel named Junior and injuring another. The remaining 2 rebels were arrested and transferred to the battalion headquarters in the nearby mining town of Bomberi. The detained men had allegedly injured one of the UN peacekeepers. Following a previous attack against civilians and UN peacekeepers, the UN mission in CAR, known as MINUSCA, said, any attack targeting the civilian population, UN, and humanitarian personnel is a war crime that can be prosecuted in accordance with Central African law and international law. For its part, the UPC denied that its troops had attacked the UN peacekeepers. It's false, said UPC spokesman Suleiman Dada. But the UN's top official in Bomberi at the time, Zlatko Barz-Dimitrov, recommended an immediate transfer of the rebels to Bangui for a proper investigation by local judicial authorities. For the next 14 days, a flurry of emails between senior UN and CAR officials decided the fate of the 2 rebels, Rodolphe Samboagain and Ilyasa Ibrahim. They effectively let them go. Kindly convey to UPC leadership that by taking such reckless actions their elements have committed a serious crime which cannot go unpunished, Parfait Onanga Anyanga, the head of the UN peacekeeping mission in CAR, known as MINUSCA, wrote in an email obtained by the BBC. UPC would receive a strong message that attacks against MINUSCA, the UN peacekeeping mission in CAR, will have consequences, no impunity, Mr. Barz-Dimitrov wrote in agreement. Yet, in order to appease the electoral process in Wakar region, UN authorities decided to set the alleged war criminals free, handing them over to local UPC leader Ali Darassa. The confidential UN report says. Human Rights Watch has documented multiple war crimes committed by Mr. Darassa and his faction, one of the major rebel groups fighting for control of the country's resource-rich central region. Technically, the 2 rebel soldiers were released on liberté provisoire, provisional freedom, and effectively means the court can still investigate the suspect while that person is free from detention. But releasing someone on liberté provisoire in the current context is effectively just letting them go, explained Human Rights Watch researcher Louis Mudge. Early warning signs of genocide. In 2013, Muslim militias called the Seleka seized power in Central African Republic. Largely Christian fighters known as the Anti-Balaka took up arms to fight back. More than 1 million people have since been displaced by continued fighting, and thousands killed. In August, the UN's aid chief said he saw early warning signs of genocide in Central African Republic. About 13,000 United Nations peacekeepers are deployed in the country at a cost of nearly $900 million, £686 million, per year in the mission known as MINUSCA. The UN mandate includes fighting against impunity, but numerous allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse have been made against peacekeepers. How to referee warlords in the age of Trump. More about Central African Republic. Since 2011, there have only been 2 criminal sessions in the country, both at the High Court in Bangui. Neither of these sessions addressed crimes committed during the conflict. Officials within the UN have questioned the decision to release 2 rebel soldiers. One staff member, Nicholas Vysny, wrote in an internal email chain that the peacekeeping mission needs to be careful, to avoid giving the impression that justice is negotiable. Indeed, there is a pattern of the UN peacekeepers not seeking accountability of armed groups. Just one day before the Galabaroma incident, Mr. Darasa's rebels attacked the Ngakobo displacement camp with complete impunity and continue to commit war crimes in the region, says Mr. Mudge of Human Rights Watch. The researcher found that the rebels killed 8 civilians, shooting 1 in the head. The UPC denies the allegations. Releasing the prisoners was a difficult decision, said Diane Corner, a senior political leader at the UN during the incidents. They need to ensure calm for the elections was a concern, Ms. Corner told the BBC. However, looking back, she said, it was not the motivation for the release of the 2 detainees. UN spokesman Vlad Montero said the rebels were released to allow for further investigations to continue. Yet, nearly 2 years later, no charges against the pair have been made. When Darasa's men can shoot at peacekeepers and massacre civilians with no repercussions, it does open the question as to the level of commitment of the national government, MINUSCA and international partners towards ensuring accountability, Mr. Mudge said. The real problem is that Darasa understands this impunity, Mr. Mudge continued. He is not stupid and he grows more and more bold every time his men kill and rape without repercussion. The BBC was unable to speak directly with either Mr. Sambo again or Mr. Ibrahim, the 2 alleged war criminals, to get their account of the incident. Body never found. This wasn't the first time the UPC may have got away with murder. A few months prior to the Ngakobo incident, a UN peacekeeper, Warrant Officer Claude Buzin-Bendera, disappeared in Bomberi. At around 2300 hours one evening in July 2015, the father of 6 had walked alone from his post towards another UN building, passing Mr. Darasa's guarded compound on the way. Minutes later, nearby UN troops heard a burst of 5 or 6 gunshots. Claude Bendera never arrived at his destination. The commander of the Congolese battalion, Colonel Clement Bitangalo Bulame, immediately contacted 3 members of the UPC who tried to hide the matters, according to the incident report. After UPC rebels barred access to the alleged crime scene the next day, UN investigators discovered military shoelaces along with goatskin and blood marks that had been washed with the objective of removing the blood stains. The incident report concludes, all evidences indicates that knowingly or unknowingly the warrant officer was killed by the UPC armed group person and later on they tried to hide the scene with putting sick lots of fake and diversionary means. Publicly, the UN never acknowledged his presumed death and he still hasn't been logged as a death in public UN documents. The fate of disappeared peacekeeper remains unclear. The body was never found, said Vlad Montero, a UN spokesman. We remain optimistic that he may be alive. Attempts to contact his family using next of kin information were unsuccessful. The spokesman for the DR Congo Army could not be reached. For his part, Mr. Darasa denied everything, telling the UN he was not aware of the source of the gunshots. 2 days later the UN resumed business as normal, holding a security meeting with UPC leaders. During the meeting, Mr. Darasa suggested creating a new committee to make the public aware of the need for greater social cohesion for the return of peace.